and that is deeply personal and sexist and racist attacks against her from Donald Trump. The New York Times reports that Team Trump worries that he, quote, won't be able to contain his animosity toward Ms. Harris. Can you blame them for worrying? This is what happened the last time he debated a woman.
My Social Security payroll contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security trust.
Let's stop here, though, and add the final dimension. Think about that quote I read from a Trump aide speaking to the New York Times, that Trump, quote, won't be able to contain himself. That, in and of itself, should be enough information for all of us. He's running to be the leader of the free world, the holder of the nuclear codes. And we have his impulse control being questioned by his own team of advisors on the pages of today's New York Times. Tonight's an inflection point for us, the voters. Will we watch this confrontation and judge it with clear eyes? Will we see one candidate supported by her entire party, as well as prominent former leaders from the Republican Party, people like Dick and Liz Cheney, and the other guy, estranged from much of his own cabinet from his administration, as well as his first vice president? Will we see clearly that no matter what one guy says about the 2024 election, he's already told his own voters that they don't ever have to vote again? Will we hold each participant to the same standard tonight? Will we entertain policy discussions if both candidates can't declare on this stage tonight what the actual results of the last election really were? Will we watch with confidence and conviction, or with fear, that the bully and his enablers want us to feel? Hours to go before a high-stakes meeting between the disgraced, twice-impeached, 4 times indicted ex-president and the Democratic presidential nominee running an historic campaign is where we begin today. In Philadelphia for us, Mini Timaraju joins. She's the president of Reproductive Freedom for All. Also joining us, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller, a former RNC spokesman and host of the Bulwark podcast, plus professor of history at NYU, Ruth Ben-Ghiat is here, and political strategist and MSNBC senior analyst Matt Dowd is here. Ruth, you tell us how you're watching tonight's debate.
Yeah, thanks, Nicolle. So first of all, these are not people who are approaching this occasion in the same way. In a democracy, the purpose of a debate is to allow voters to see both candidates, attitudes and views on questions. For an authoritarian, it is an occasion to indoctrinate people and to spew lies and to really stage a kind of fear and smear propaganda show. And the authoritarian always wants to control the narrative because Trump is a very good information warrior. And the reason this is important to have all those lies is if there's no fact-checking by the moderators, that means the adversary, Harris in this case, cannot make her case to the people. She can't spend her time doing that. She has to be refuting his lies and his smears. So they are approaching this with different aims and in quite a different spirit.
So why, Ruth, why do they get set up this way? Why agree to these terms? The big picture is that we have these forms of election season, and we have these rituals in the election season, and we've had them because we're a democracy. And I believe they don't really work when you have one candidate who has exited democracy. In fact, let's just think about what will happen. One of the candidates will accept the election results, that's Harris, no matter how they fall. The other will likely contest them and has already talked about prosecuting and investigating Democrats, likely Harris included. So these are not people who are even working in the same frame. And so it is problematic to put them together and pretend everything is okay and that they're equal candidates. So I do have a problem with that whole frame that we're pretending that we're still in a democracy and we can compare these people and treat them as equals. Matt Dowd, what are your thoughts? You spent a lot of years at ABC. You know these journalists who will be conducting the debate. What are your thoughts heading into tonight? And I want to just put on the table my colleague Rachel Maddow's sentiment. I don't have it in front of me to quote her exactly. She said she's hoping for a debate that is just a normal debate, not one that changes the contours of American politics for weeks to come.
Well, I disagree with Rachel on that. I'm hoping for a debate that solidifies the dynamics of this race in the position that they're in, as opposed to it's just voters throw up their hands and say, well, it doesn't matter either one or the other. It doesn't matter, which is, I think the former is going to happen. I think it's going to solidify the position of Harris having a lead in a very contested race in this. I think David Muir and Lindsey Davis will do a good job in this. I think they will hold Donald Trump, I believe, much more accountable than the CNN moderators did in that debate with Joe Biden. Though I agree with what Ruth just said, it's very difficult when you're going to get this torrent of lies by Donald Trump to try to confront that in the midst of also trying to present what you want to present in as a candidate for Harris in this. What I think she will probably do, and I don't know this, and this is what I would recommend, but I think she's smart and she'll probably do, is you don't have to attack every single lie he tells, but I think at moments and times you have to pick certain lies and basically say, so many lies, so little time, let me deal with two of them. And do that a couple of times and then just basically swat it away and just say a couple of times, say, wow, there's just so many lies here. I know everybody says can't handle all this. Let me just confront one or two of these in the course of this. I think she needs to do that. I don't think this debate, and you know this, Nicolle, having been through this, is as much about how one candidate enunciates policy specifics as it is the values they convey to the American voter. And I think for Harris, she has much more to gain in this debate than Donald Trump does. Donald Trump's position is very solidified in the voters' minds. Favorable, unfavorable, voters dislike him, a majority dislike him. He can't change that dynamic much. The person who can change the dynamic, I think, is much more Vice President Harris in this. And I think she does that by coming across as both simultaneously strong and empathetic in the course of this. And she can do that by enunciating policies and using policies to show she's strong and can do what the American public wants, as well as relate to average Americans. But I also think she needs to show her strength in confronting Donald Trump, not throughout the hour and a half, but at certain key moments, she needs to confront Donald Trump, more so to build up her own stake than to obviously hold Donald Trump accountable in the voters' mind.
And your point about the upside for her is that he walks in as known by everybody. Nobody's undecided on Donald Trump. There are no variables, there are no levers for him to plus up or down. She's the one that comes in your view, in your analysis, Matt, with the ability to further solidify the good impression people have and to introduce herself again to people who are just tuning in.
Yeah, there's two things that I think pillars of what tonight for her are. The first one is she's got to maintain the enthusiasm advantage that Democrats have over Donald Trump, which is significant. Democrats did not have an enthusiasm advantage in 2020. They did not have an enthusiasm advantage in 2016. The last time the Democrats had an enthusiasm advantage like this was in 2008. So the debate, she has to maintain that. But the group of voters, which is only about 5 or 6% of the country, that's either undecided or soft Harris supporters or soft Trump supporters, that group already dislikes Donald Trump. They are looking for a reason to go and solidify with Vice President Harris. They already dislike Donald Trump. They don't want to vote for Donald Trump. And so all they're looking for is something to hang their hat on that the vice president, and to me, it's both a quality of strength and a quality of empathy. And if she conveys those, then I think she solidifies her support. But one thing I want people to keep in mind, solidifying your support in the aftermath of this debate means that you maintain a 3 or 4% lead. That's it.
Tim, I wish that I had thought before you sat down to pull your slaying of Piers Morgan, because the story you tell to Piers Morgan about why Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have never met is, to me, a wonderful story should she decide to explain why they weren't on the same stage in 2020. Tell the story here.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that again when you read that quote from the Trump aides. So they said that he can't contain his animosity. And it's like, why? I mean, there's no reason for that other than sexism or racism or jealousy, because they haven't met. Donald Trump doesn't know Kamala Harris. What reason does he have to have animosity towards her? He just can't help himself, right? This impulse control. And so, going back to what you asked about, what I chatted with Piers Morgan about. Piers had interviewed Corey Lewandowski, and they had this little softball interview right before I spoke to them. And Corey was like, "You won't believe this, Piers, but Donald Trump and Kamala have never met. This will be the first time." And Piers is like, "Wow, that's amazing." And they had this chummy little chat where Piers begs Corey to let Donald do an interview with him. And I came on next and I said, "Well, wait a minute. Did you ever think to ask him why they haven't met?" They didn't meet because Donald Trump lost in 2020. He had a temper tantrum like a child. And for the first time since the Civil War, we did not have a peaceful transfer of power. For the first time, the ceremonial transfer of power did not include the existing administration working with and passing the baton to the incoming administration. He didn't show up to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's inauguration. He flew home to Mar-a-Lago and his emotional support Cougars, and he golfed, and he had a temper tantrum. That's what Donald Trump did. That's why they haven't met, because he's a baby. And so, like thinking about what Ruth mentioned at the beginning, all of that is context for this debate, right? This is the first debate that these two have had since that. This is the first time we've had debates since somebody attempted a coup and did not participate in the oldest democracy's peaceful transfer of power, and now he wants to be back in that White House again. And I think it is important to think about that context and to talk about it, and to talk about it just bluntly and frankly, because, like Ruth says, this isn't like Mitt Romney versus Obama, right? It is different. It is different in nature because it's the first time that they will be on stage together, and it's the first time we'll have somebody that's been convicted of felonies on that stage, the first time somebody's been impeached twice. On that stage with her. And so, it's not her job to kind of bring all of that up, the whole debate. I think Matt makes some really good points about what her job is, to introduce herself, to show strength, to pick her spots. But I think at times it's important for the moderators and for the vice president to kind of just remind people of the reality in a frank way. So that people understand, the viewers watching, why this crazed madman is on stage with her.
Minnie, I picked up on this idea that Trump may not be able to contain himself, because no aide would say that about a woman, right? She might not be able to contain herself. It suggests a lack of control. And only a male advisor to a male candidate would project onto the pages of the New York Times their candidate's lack of control when sharing a stage with a woman. It's a remarkable framing for the Trump campaign to be offering up tonight, that if he attacks her in a ghoulish, sexist, misogynistic, racist way, it won't be his fault. It will be because he couldn't contain himself. And it has an echo back to something we covered yesterday, the Access Hollywood tape and the record of close to 24 women credibly accusing Donald Trump of sexual misconduct and sexual assault. All of that is now ballasted to a policy that affects every woman with a womb, every woman who has ever had a child, every woman who thinks she might someday want to have a child, any woman who ever looked back and remembered being able to have a child, and every man and child who loves any one of those women in any of those stages in her life. And that is overturning Roe and bragging about it. Tell me how you think his misogyny might be experienced differently